Ho, ho, ho. Ho, ho, ho. Everybody was Lucas and Zack podcasting. Those cats were fast as lightning. In fact, it was a little bit frightening. But they were fought with expert podcasting.
It was definitely a little bit frightening, which is also the subtitle to this entire podcast. Welcome back to another episode in the 2020 Movies Month. We are talking Small Axe, which is the cinematic achievement of the year. And we have a special guest with us, a returning guest, one of our favorites, Mr. Chance Ellison.
Hello, happy to be back.
Zack is here. Zack is, Zack, I would say, what is this, 85% Zack? We're saying 75% Zack.
Oh, like 35% Zack. That's crying like he's 85.
Zack, toughing it out, not feeling great. But we're talking Small Axe. First, last Letterboxd movie, Zack Ford, last Letterboxd movie.
Of course, I forgot what I was going to say. Coming number 2, coming 12, America. This is a podcast for him. Putting up number 2 is not going to tell the title. Coming 12, America. I'm a pretty solid fan of the original Coming to America. There's a lot of Eddie Murphy classics I haven't seen, so to say it's my favorite is not fair. Like I haven't seen Trading Places, so I can't make that comparison. But it is definitely one of my favorite Eddie Murphy, or it's my favorite Eddie Murphy movie that I have seen. Coming to America. This one, I feel like it's a little ill-designed in a way that like Eddie Murphy is barely he's in it, but like barely gets to do much. I feel like he does a couple of his characters, the barbershop characters, the singer's name, the sexual chocolate singer, I forget. He gets to
Randy Watson.
But they seem more just like recalls from the past rather than actually showcasing those characters because they're in it for just a second. Just like, oh yeah, remember these guys? But they don't really give time to the comedy. For some reason, this cares so much more about the story than the original one and gives a lot of time to the development of the Prince character, who, without spoilers, doesn't even tend to like matter to the overall story of the universe, Coming to America universe that much. So it just really lacked Eddie Murphy. Doing Eddie Murphy is playing like a serious king role. He did spend 45 minutes introducing people, just like doing royal introductions and lots of musical performances. So I feel like if they cut off having Gladys Knight and Salt and Pepper and all these other musical performances and actually focused on making a comedy movie, it might have succeeded a little more. It was nice to see them stretch out the world a little bit, but other than that, I think it was kind of a disappointment.
Like focusing on the story over the original is like a classic comedy sequel pitfall, where they're like, let's make a sequel to this comedy movie that people thought was super funny, but instead of focusing on all the funny stuff, let's focus on all the really complicated plot stuff because that's what everybody loves.
Yeah, let's act like it's the character dramas that you really care about and their arcs, not that there's just good jokes.
Chance, have you seen the new Coming to America?
Surprisingly enough, no, I haven't. I haven't gotten around to it yet. I want to because I love the original Coming to America, but yeah, as far as the new one, just have not had a chance to sit down and watch it.
I wonder if you're like me, where I was somewhat excited for it coming out, and then I saw the reviews, and this thing is getting destroyed. Like, it is very negative.
Because I feel like I'm actually more on the negative side than a lot of what I heard. A lot of it's just like, that's fine.
I believe it's at like 25% on Rotten Tomatoes or something.
I don't think it's that low. I think it's something like the 50s last I saw.
I thought it was really. We can look this up right now. Maybe I'm completely wrong.
I will say
this is getting savaged.
I do think Leslie Jones.
Oh no, it's 53. All right, I was wrong.
She honestly gets the most comedic bits of anybody, and I think she brings a neat energy to the movie. So I like to see her pop up.
Fair. Yeah.
She gets to play like Leslie Jones in the movie, like her bed.
I gotta be honest, Leslie Jones as a movie actress doesn't work for me. Like
I think in roles like this,
it's
like kind of supporting comedic character, she's not lead. Just coming.
I can see that. Yeah. She's just one of those people that like it feels like she left SNL to do movies, but she never stopped performing like she was in an SNL skit, which is why any kind of long form Leslie Jones stuff becomes tiresome really quickly.
Except I would argue that's why some comedic
Kate
creators
McKinnon
had that same problem.
Is the exact same problem where it's like
I feel like
she is very funny for a
Kristen Wiig
5
has the
second.
opposite problem.
What?
Kristen Wiig, I don't agree with this at all, just because I think we already talked in the show how I think Kristen Wiig.
I didn't say Kristen Wiig. Kate McKinnon. I said Kate McKinnon.
No, but I'm saying
Kristen Wiig gets.
But she didn't play in. I'm saying Kristen Wiig didn't play into the SNL bits more. She tried to go so far away from it.
No, exactly. And
the industry, I think, failed. I rather them stick with what they're good at and bring SNL like comedy to movies that don't live anymore. And this is my bit on Barbara Star again and why that movie is a masterpiece.
To be fair, Kristen Wiig actually had like a quite successful movie career in a way that Kate McKinnon and Leslie Jones just don't. So I think there's something to be said about keeping your comedy roots if you come up SNL, but also like you're not doing 5-minute sketches anymore. You can't act like that in a movie because you'll be Kate McKinnon and every one of your characters is so incredibly irritating that you cannot watch a full movie of them.
Except weirdly enough in fucking Bombshell.
That is one of the more random that's one of those rules where it's like it's Kate McKinnon or it could be literally anyone else.
I'm trying to think what
she's not bad in it. I don't think she's bad.
No, she's not bad in it, but it's like it's a forgettable. It's a nothing role with like kind of could be played by almost anyone. There's not a lot there.
Sure, fair enough. But that's a lot of roles in that movie as well.
True, exactly.
What's the funniest Kate McKinnon movie role?
What's the what?
The most successful Kate McKinnon movie role.
You talking about like quality or cash?
I'm thinking like quality. What was her funniest role
in a movie?
Like, was she good in anything? Was she funny in Office Christmas Party? I can't remember.
No one is funny in that.
Let's see. Most successful.
You don't have to spend too much time on this question. I just wanted to pop out, see if we had any.
I don't think I've legitimately. I'm looking down her list of movies. I haven't seen a lot of them because they're like rare. So I've seen Sisters in the last 6 months, and I don't remember her in them.
But that was before. I feel like she wasn't even on SNL.
I think
she was on at the time.
Isn't she like I think she's like part of a lesbian couple or something, but that's like the entire joke, and it may be like 30 seconds long.
That's it. That's literally it.
If you look at her, it is actually a shockingly large amount of the somewhat decent budget blockbusters that just absolutely failed. Like,
but she didn't have a major role in anything other than Ghostbusters.
Yeah, it's her career is terrible. Like, she's in Rough Night, which is a bad movie, and she is so annoying in that movie.
She's in the Great American Classic Yesterday podcast favorite, the best.
Oh my god, she is unforgivingly bad in that movie.
Everybody's unforgivably bad in that movie.
I don't think everybody is. Lily James.
The Beatles are unforgivably bad in that movie just for existing. So
fuck off! Don't assault the Beatles because Yesterday's bad. All right, no, we're not gonna go there.
They never existed. That movie would have been made.
Welcome to Zack Ford Shits on Popular Music Hour.
Hey, I like the Kinks over the Beatles. What am I gonna say? What's the guy gonna do?
That's an awful take. Whatever.
I will defend that.
Chance, what's your last Letterboxd movie?
Last one I believe was Chaos Walking. latest in a long line of YA failures. I think. I'm not sure the book was YA. I didn't read it.
I from what I heard, it is.
Yeah, but yeah, this movie is a fucking mess, man. It's the world itself is complicated itself because it's like all about how like this like crew of humans crash on this planet. This isn't on Earth. They crash onto another planet, and like all the men are affected by this thing called the noise, where you can like see every thoughts that they have, but it only affects the men, and all the women are gone. So like, I don't know if this world is like women's greatest tactical advantage or their worst nightmare. It really could be either one, honestly. And yeah, so Tom Holland and Daisy, they really plays a girl who crashed there. Haven't seen a girl in like years. And so it's kind of basically her trying to like get the fuck out of Dodge because no one wants to be here for obvious reasons. Interesting thing about this is, it's directed by Doug Liman. It doesn't feel that way at all. Like any Joe Blow could have directed this movie. I don't think it would have had as stacked a cast as it did if Doug Liman didn't direct it. If you didn't have like a name like that behind the lens, I don't think it would have gotten like nearly as great a cast. Like Lucas, your boy, Mads Mikkelsen, It's in this
The
movie.
man.
And he's not good.
Wow. Mads Mikkelsen, Damian Bashir, Cynthia Erivo, David Oyelowo. Wow.
David Oyelowo and Dan Bashir are like the two people who I think are really actually like genuinely enjoyable in this film. David Oyelowo, I don't think he knows the movie he's in because he's acting in a completely different film than everybody else. David Bashir actually does have some. You're muted, Zach. Can't hear you.
As a David Oyelowo post Selma often kind of seems like he doesn't really know what movie he's in.
That's true. That's very true. But Dan Bashir is also nice. There's a really like random casting, like Kurt Sutter's in the movie. The guy created Sons of Anarchy.
Why? I do. As far as I know, this book is like a pretty like acclaimed series, so I think that helps get the cast as well.
And interesting enough, like I used to the writer of the book and the movie. I used to live with his nephew. Like his nephew used to be my roommate, and so I was able to. There was like here like some behind the scenes things about it. So I'm like, okay, it sounds interesting. But I remember seeing like every trailer I saw, I'm just like, wow, Doug Liman after lockdown especially, like Doug Liman's about to take back-to-back L's this year. That's sad because I do think he's a good director, and I really think he's about to start pushing really hard for Edge Tomorrow too.
Hey, he'll go to space soon with Elon Musk.
He is going to space,
so he's living a good life. It's okay.
And maybe like he's just make Tom Cruise movies now because those seem to be really big hits for him.
This was originally set to come out in March 2019, and then they pulled it to do reshoots because it got terrible test screenings.
Is McQuarrie taking over the MI franchise? Mean Doug Liman missed out his chance. I feel like he would have been like in line to do a Mission Impossible.
At one point, he probably would have done one if McQuarrie didn't want to come back. I guarantee you, like he would have been the next call if McQuarrie didn't come back.
Done number 2, probably.
No, keep John Woo because that movie is hilarious.
That's a John Woo movie.
Tom Cruise.
This was like Chaos Walking's first script draft was written by Charlie Kaufman.
And then they threw out that entire draft.
John Lee Hancock did a revision on it.
Oh fuck! I didn't know that.
The author of the book,
Patrick Ness.
Patrick Ness did a rewrite on it.
I think if you're combining Charlie Kaufman or John Lee Hancock, it's a disaster to happen.
That is kind of a statement about like how much your movie is a mess. Is if you get two people who are so different, and you're like, both of you are gonna take a shot at this. That means that they didn't know what they were doing.
It's an overcorrecting. Like Charlie Kaufman was probably just like too ambitious, too weird. Let's just go the safest bet we can with Johnny Hancock, which I don't know, might have went that way. I do like knowing the plot and knowing that it's like reading thoughts out loud. It sounds like something that should have always kept the paper. That does not seem like anything that could work cinematically. It has to be so obnoxious.
Well, and the thing is, like, it's not as obnoxious because like they don't do it like all the time. Like situations where you think your mom be racing. It's not racing, which is a problem. Like, you're drawn like inconsistencies like that. You walk away very much knowing the name of Tom Holland's character because like what he does, like the way he does, like when he's like in distress, or tries to like hide his thoughts. He'll constantly like repeat in his mind, like I am Todd Hewitt, and I swear to God, they say his name like 50 times in the movie.
I assumed he just masturbated and then he cleared his thoughts.
I just remember this movie coming. Like I remember hearing what's the movie, and he was like, "Oh my God, Spider-Man and Ray are going to be in a movie together," because that's how.
And Grindelwald.
It's just getting everyone together. Whatever his character name was in Doctor Strange, the most forgettable Caecilius, maybe.
What the fuck are you talking about?
Matt Nicholson.
Matt Nicholson, Caecilius, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I thought you're mixing up black dudes. I'm not sure they were yellow. I'm like, what the fuck?
No, I'm not mixing up British black dudes.
I'm like, it's funny because I remember watching the original trailer. I didn't even know this till now. Damon Bashir is basically like Latino Michael Stolberg. Like look them up both with beards. Like they look very similar.
This is true. Damon Bashir has one amazing performance, which is a better life. I love him in that movie.
I mean, sure, but he's also like he's a good actor. Like,
no, absolutely.
A lot of things, but
he's also one of those classic people who is a foreign actor who is really good when he's on his native language, and when they make him act in English, he often gets stuck in big blockbusters that are terrible. Like he did like one of the Conjuring movies, when it's like really one of the really bad Conjuring movies.
He was in The Nun, yeah.
Yeah, he's one of those people that like they pull him for the prestige of him, like his persona, but then they put him in these just dumpster fire blockbusters that just don't have anything going on.
Yeah, I mean,
So
God
Chaos
bless,
Walking,
God bless Covenant, but yeah, that's true.
Chaos Walking, not good.
No, not very good.
Yeah,
Can't wait for the sequel. Chaos Running. I'm assuming.
Also,
All right, that would be the third one. Chaos.
They do
Halloween.
much like every movie like they do set up the sequel,
Yeah.
which
This
likely will
movie
happen.
cost $100 million.
It shows.
Man, you mean $100 million movie? Yikes!
What, Lyman?
No, I'm just shocked that this is like.
Oh, okay, that was made for that much money.
Yeah,
Hey,
just
Lucas.
like, especially considering how terrible it's supposed to go. What's up?
I have a question for you.
Shoot!
What'd you last log in Letterboxd?
Look at me! Look at you! Look at you taking over.
Yeah.
Okay, so the last thing I did was 2016's Your Name, which is arguably the most beautiful animated movie ever. This is just absolutely gorgeous story of coming of age, and I don't really want to go too much into the plot because it's basically hard to talk about this without spoiling it, and I don't want to do that for everyone. You should go out and watch it. Please watch the subtitled version. I think that's the best version.
Did you watch both?
No, but I read a lot of bad things about the dub.
Who voices the dub?
Nobody. No,
really literally
nobody. You've literally like this is not Studio Ghibli where it's like who's in the dub? Oh, it's Liam Neeson. It's like no, they it's never a good sign when your dub has nobody.
And Zach's boy, Billy Crudup.
Yeah.
There was famous people weathering with you at least. So this sequel. Once he got big enough name, I guess, and then so Weathering with You had more of some notes on it when it got here.
Yeah.
So who was in that? Yeah.
Looking it up.
Riz
Your
Ahmed.
Name. That's good.
Yeah, I know. Alison Brie.
She's somebody.
She's somebody. There was a third person. I don't know who it is, but oh well, we'll never know.
All right.
Well, trying to read through the cast on the anime movies is difficult to do every time.
So Your Name is wonderful and gorgeous and amazing, and everyone should watch it because it is not only one of the most gorgeous animated movies, but also just one of the best movies of 2016 and probably of the 2010s overall. Kind of embarrassed that it took me this long to get to it. Please watch it. It's wonderful.
Go for the remake, right?
Oh dear Lord! What on earth are you going to do a live action remake?
I don't think that premise is like inherently built for. I don't think that premise is inherently Japanese or B inherently animated. So I think it could work.
See, I think that some of that movie is the visual style, and I think that when you go live action, you're going to have such a kind of generic movie. Like I think Your Name could be very generic if you make it in live action because it just won't have because part of that is that movie is just stunning. There are shots of it that are just like, wow, I want that as a piece of art. And I just don't think you recreate that.
Is it an American live action remake?
Yeah. I think so, yeah.
That's the problem. I think there's a cultural specificity to the characters and action that's going to get lost. And it's just going to seem like a Netflix teen movie when they make it here.
Yeah, probably.
Maybe.
Who is remaking it? Is it
I think Mark Webb's on it. I don't know if it's like.
I thought you were about to say Mark Wahlberg. Really into your name. Hey, you know who's really into your name, by the way? Jim Belushi, classic anime fan. Jim Belushi.
Yeah.
He has a good Twitter to follow. It's all about his like pot farm and then like asking for anime movie recommendations because he did work for Ghibli and wants to know more. Because he's in like Ponyo.
That's right.
Is he in Ponyo?
Ponyo. I think he was in Ponyo.
Is he in Ponyo or Porco Rosso?
It's one of it's one of those two.
I think it might be Porco Rosso.
Or maybe he's in both. I'm not sure.
He's in everyone. He's their Ratzenberg.
Every time we need a dub, we go get Jim Belushi.
Yeah, he's definitely not in Porco Rosso. All right. We're gonna go down the rabbit hole. We talked about Your Name. Your Name is wonderful. Go watch it, everyone. I will not spoil it. Let's continue on to the main discussion, which is of course Small Axe, the 5-film series from director Steve McQueen. Before we dig into the movies, I wanted to ask you guys a quick question, which is previous experience with McQueen, and then what you've thought of his work up to date. Zach Ford.
My experience with McQueen is just a casual friendship. We would, hang out about once a month, sometimes be each other at other parties. As far as my relationship with his movies, I have never seen Hunger. And then post that, I said, stay caught up with everything. I mean, especially, 12 Years a Slave made him a director to watch. I made sure I, kept up with his career. I've been fairly mixed. I'm not a Shame fan, and maybe on a rewatch I can kind of get what that's going for. More 12 Years a Slave, I have problems with. It's writing that I have problems with. It's not really as far. I think the direction is pretty beautiful. I think it's a very overwritten movie. Widows is a fucking blast, and I do kind of like Steve McQueen. I wanted him to experiment with genre, bring his kind of artfulness to the high genre like he did for Widows, and bringing it with other things. But I mean, he's an ambitious guy. He's a thoughtful guy, and I like him going for new things. I was so interested here that this is really an experimental thing he was going for, making a 5-movie series in a way, and had very sincere roots to do it. It was like a love letter to his family and his community, and he wanted his elder family members to see themselves on screen. And so when I hear that's being made, I'm like, I trust him, and I want to see what his heart created here.
Same question to you, Chance.
Yeah, I've seen everything this dude's directed, and I think it was like around the time where 12 Years a Slave was coming out, and I heard like, oh, he's like this like really great director from England. Like, really, a black British director? I got to see named after the star of The Great Escape. I got to see this shit. So I watched Hunger. I watched Shame. Shame was one of my movies the past decade. I think that film was phenomenal, and put what is maybe the best performance of the past decade on screen, Michael Fassbender. I think he's fucking excellent in that film. Probably should have won Best Actor, but that's not a possibility. But he's literally better than anybody you could have given that Oscar to that year. But yeah, like I'm really digging like his more mainstream projects. I really love 12 Years a Slave. Widows, one of my favorites of not last year. 18 was the year it came out. Yeah, really love that movie. So yeah, he's one of those dudes where like I will anytime he's down to new projects. In that same vein as like like Ryan Coogler or Taika Waititi, like anytime announce like a new project, like yes, I'm there. I don't care what it is, but just injected right into my veins. So yeah, I heard we're getting like 5 movies from Steve McQueen. I was pumped, and yeah, I think this is an amazing cinematic achievement.
Yeah, it's so I'm also with Zach. I have not seen Hunger. And I was just looking at his career. It's kind of amazing that this guy has only made small acts in 4 other movies in 12 years. Like that's a kind of impressively low work rate for somebody who I'm surprised that at no point they ever went after. Like it's surprising that we have seen even less rumors about McQueen, like trying to get McQueen to do a Star Wars. Doesn't even seem to be the rumors that exist about trying to McQueen to sign on to major projects in the way.
Well, I mean, I also feel like studios aren't going to look at him because they feel like he wouldn't do it. I don't think he'd do it. It'd be cool if he did. I would love to see Steve McQueen's Blade, but I don't think he'd do it.
After Widows, I think there's a better argument for getting him.
Barry Jenkins is doing Lion King too. Anything can happen.
That's very true. But Widows is still like that's still a personal connection to him because it's based on a British miniseries that he grew up watching. So I feel like he still has that personal attachment there. So that's the thing you can kind of see with all of his work. He does things where he has personal attachment to it. So it looks like his personal attachment to like a Marvel comic or a Star Wars or a DC comic. I don't feel like he'd touch it. I would love to see him try. And like maybe
what if it turns out he's a huge Zach Braff fan, and then Disney gets him to do the live action remake of Chicken Little? It's gonna happen.
Why not?
Steve McQueen's Chicken Little. Is that what you want?
I do want to mention I looked up his in development projects. It looks like his next movie is a World War II documentary.
Is it really?
So he's going the Peter Jackson route?
It's called The Occupied City, about Amsterdam under Nazi occupation in World War II. It then has not enough information for 2 projects that are in development, but one is called the Untitled Paul Robeson Project. So a Paul Robeson biopic seems like his next narrative feature. which could be interesting.
Yeah,
Okay.
he's an interesting filmmaker.
I'd really like to try a horror movie, like a straightforward horror movie, not like racial paranoia horror movie.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, at this point, I feel like I'm down to let him do whatever he wants to do. He just he feels like he makes interesting choices. This one, in some ways, it's interesting because I feel like Small Axe is more personal and smaller than anything else he's done. It feels like in some ways the biggest risk. The other ones are 12 Years a Slave is obviously not a movie that everyone's going to be enjoying, but there's a large story. There's a history of success with subject matter, even some of his other movies. And then Small Axe really does feel maybe this is bigger in Britain. And I would be interested to know, what kind of resonance these stories have going into them to the people who've grown up in that culture, in that country. These are not things that we around the world know about. You don't hear about the Mangrove trial outside of in the U.S. anyway. I mean, I've never heard about it, any of this stuff. If you'd asked me, was there racism directed towards people of color in Britain in the 60s and 80s, I would have been probably yes, but only based on the fact that the same thing happened in the U.S. I wouldn't have had any actual knowledge of this.
But I think that's what works about this collection, the fact that the theme, the general themes of these 5 stories, they do have international play. A lot of these issues that we're dealing with in these movies, we are dealing with here in the States.
Oh, absolutely.
So I feel like they translate really well to different audiences.
They're very British specific stories with universal applications. Exactly. Everyone can understand them. Let's jump right into the first one. So let's talk about I took our individual rankings of the 5 movies and then I also did change my rankings too, which was changing, but I took the rankings a while ago and created this order because we wanted to not necessarily, if we followed Steve McQueen's order that he put them up in, we would have ended up talking about some of the ones we were less passionate towards the end, the ones we were most passionate at the beginning, and we wanted to have a gradual gradient towards our favorites. So we're going to start with the story Alex Weidel. So Alex Weidel is the story of a kid who grows up in foster care in the country with white foster parents and sort of doesn't understand his own culture, moves to England, gets involved with some people in the Black West African community who kind of teach him the ropes, teach him how life works. He's a little bit green coming in. He gets involved in some drug activity, the music scene, ends up getting arrested as part of the Brixton riots, goes to prison. We have a couple seasons of him in prison talking about how to free yourself is to free your mind, and reading and learning about your culture and learning about how words and power and knowledge is power. And then the movie basically ends with him getting out, and in a title card at the end we find out he went on to become a famous novelist, which is sort of just the end point, but rather than a part of the story. What did everyone think of this one?
I mean, I'll see the floor to Zach first.
All right. And, this has became my least favorite one. I think it's, I don't want to say being mean because this is a masterpiece of a project, but I think it's the worst made in a way. I think primarily it's just trying to get a lot of story while keeping a pretty slight time, to where I feel unsatisfied in a lot of ways. A lot of things feel rushed. I think especially his kind of evolution into man of culture, or into the writer, or person that can create change through his words, is very rushed at the end. Someone who's maybe toning down the radical protesting and fighting his route, and his way he can use intelligence. I feel that's hashed out in 2 minutes. I think he cares much more about the first half in this, which is him assimilating to the culture, which is interesting, but I think it just neglects kind of the more interesting parts of Alex Weidel's evolution.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest problems with this movie is the fact that for being only an hour and change, it's kind of hard to follow. It'll instantly we'll constantly cut back between him on the outside, him maybe in present day, him when he's like just learning the culture, him in prison again, back to the outside. You never really know like when you are in the story. Like when we got to the end, I thought we were still at the part like before he went to prison. So like I think that's a problem. And the thing with this film, the thing with this particular story is the fact that it is actually an interesting concept. Like taking a dude who is basically kind of like culture blind to himself and basically like learning that. But yeah, I mean, between like, learning that black culture, becoming a famous like reggae singer, to becoming a drug dealer, becoming an integral part of riots, like it's just way too much to squeeze into 1 hour.
Yeah, it's a really disjointed story. It really would, I think, be improved if they had a focused main timeline. Like, is the main timeline we're coming back to him in prison? Is it him before prison? Is it him after prison? Like, there needs to be like the concrete. There needs to be the place that we keep going back to. And the problem is they treat all three storylines as the same and as important. Like this would work if he was in prison and they were doing flash forwards and flashbacks. The problem is they really just kind of jump around, and it's not always clear. And yeah, I do agree with Zach. This is one that like they needed to, I feel like McQueen really wanted to talk about this guy and he finds him interesting. And maybe Alex Weidel also should have been 2 hours and really dug into the story. There's some of these that feel like they should have been longer, which is actually like, it's interesting. I think they're so good, but there are definitely a couple that I think there's longer. And this is one where it feels like either you needed to have a more specific focus, cut out some parts of his life. Like, I think you could have done a really great movie about just what it's like to be a black man and coming into a culture like not understanding black culture and having to learn your own culture because the way you were brought up, you were isolated from your culture because you were put with white foster parents and they didn't let you engage with your own culture, and then being thrown into a situation where you walk in and you're like the country bumpkin, except to the cops you're a black person and you're potentially dangerous and you have to act and behave a different way to stay safe and to like live your life, but you just don't have that knowledge because you grew up in a situation where you just never would have learned it.
Yeah, I to compare this to one we'll talk about later, Red, White, and Blue, I think also fills a lot of like a life into a short amount of story. I think what makes that one function that this is missing is still a central relationship and central conflict that carries over through the whole movie. So like Red, White, and Blue, you're still very involved in what's happening between him and his father that keeps you interested and happening with his father's, criminal case. So there's something still kind of linking all the other events together, while this is, missing a central point to care to other than the evolution of the character. But once again, I never felt fully attached to what he was going through. It almost at points seemed like different characters. I think especially at the end when, we kind of see him going through this kind of like renaissance in a way, discovering himself as a writer. You're just told this. You witness him learning from his prison mate what it means to, learn from reading and evolve your mind, but you don't see him put that into action. And so you never really understand the man he became.
It has that frustrating biopic thing where they have the end title cards that tell you information you wanted to see in the movie. Like, it tells you, oh, this guy went on to do all this stuff. It's like, but you as a viewer and audience are like, well, then why am I not getting to see that? Why do I have to just read this guy went on to do all this stuff? None of the other stories really ask you to just read a big part of his story. Like, they all have, like Mangrove and Red, White, and Blue, obviously these people continue on. They continue having lives, but none of the stuff that they tell you in the title cards you needed to see because it's just a continuation of what you've already seen. And Alex Weidel feels like what's coming next is the part that you have not seen at all in the narrative. And you're like, why are you telling me he does something that I haven't seen at all?
Yeah, and I mean, like, I agree with both of you. Like, it would benefited greatly from having like a story structure, like like have it be have it be bookend with him like going in jail, him coming out a changed man, and then like showing the events in between. I think the actor, like the main guy, I don't know his name, but I think he's good in the role. I think he's doing what he can. The problem is, due to the writing and the editing, there's not really a whole lot of consistency in that performance. Like kind of like Zack said, you can feel like two different characters from one part to the next, and then certain storylines just get dropped in the middle with no, like almost unceremoniously.
Yeah, She Cole is really good in it.
She Cole's good.
It's a good central performance. I do think there's a struggle around it that there is not necessarily. A lot of the stories benefit by having at least two interesting characters, and there are interesting characters in his orbit, but never one that specifically isolates them as like the second most important character. And maybe that would work better if you had like a more structured narrative where it was so focused on him. But it does feel like it takes time to focus on other characters that none of the other characters necessarily pop the way you would like them to.
I'm trying to give credit. Oh, there, I got his name. I do think Robbie G or Gee, who plays Simeon in prison, is fantastic, and he's good. You know, he has a lot of soul and has a spirit. He seems like a pretty working actor, you know, compared to a lot of people.
He's from Snatch.
Yeah, he's in Paddington too.
Is he really?
He's Mr. Barnes. I don't know who he is.
I think he was the black inmate that never talked.
Okay, he's also an Underworld. He's done a lot. He has a career. So I would like him to get a bigger role from this because I think he has a lot. He has a very soulful quality to him, and also just a good presence. I want to say, but he's my favorite performance in the movie.
Interesting. Yeah, I think there's like, you know, there's a couple good moments. I like Crucial Rockers a bit for their music. This is kind of, you know, and this continues with the trend that you see throughout them, is that music is hugely important. And I think McQueen makes a really concerted effort to point out that music is culture. And that's really important, that in some ways cultures are divided by the music they listen to. And I think he makes clear throughout the series, look at what the white people listen to, look at what the black people listen to. There's like a clear, like, this is cultural. People listen to this because it's part of the culture. And it's I think
the music is also used very differently in each movie. And the genre, like, this has been deemed a lot as like a reggae music series, but it's not even true. Like, reggae is somewhat in Mangrove. It's mostly in Alex Weidel. It really evolves into what is dub rather than reggae and lovers rock, and some other like subgenres of it. And then, you know, Red, White, and Blue is Motown and soul. And you know, more populated, and then Education has probably the least music to it. When it does, it's more the like British rock invasion stuff that was happening at the time. So he really delves into all of the, you know, Black British music, you know, through the times, but also a little bit of the, you know, the more popular British stuff as well.
Absolutely. Anyone have any more thoughts on Alex Weidel, or can we continue on to the next one?
I'm good.
All right, yeah. So the next one we were going to talk about is Education. Education is the story of a kid who's in school, and he's being a kid, and he's goofing off, and he's maybe not doing the best in all his grades. And his teacher decides, all right, we're going to send him to this special school. And then we encounter an activist who talks to his mom, talks to him, is like, yeah, this is part of the British plan. They're sending black kids to schools for the educationally subnormal. And then basically becomes, it's basically just a commentary on the education system using this individual story as the main focus, which is obviously a problem in Britain and a problem in literally anywhere that there are different races in schools. Yeah. So this is probably the most universal of all of them. Yeah, this is Zach. You're a teacher.
Yeah,
It's not an education.
Yeah,
I mean, we briefly did talk about how you know, the whole series is pretty resonant to stuff happening in America as well. It's the magic of what Steve McQueen was able to create, but this one just especially maybe because I am so close to it. It's just like an issue that was, you know, never solved. Education, you know, equity for minorities, that, you know, never giving the opportunity for what's the word I'm looking for you know, movement. It's, you know, this second watch, it kind of hit me a little stronger, to help me a little more, and made me a little more doubting of my own habits and maybe even biases in my profession. I did like get a little hurt watching the guy sing the animal song for 5 minutes to the kids. I don't want to say I've done that. I've definitely played ukulele in my class and have done other kind of show-offy bits for my own attention's sake.
I will admit, as watching it this time, I saw that character and I was like, that is the most Zack Ford character I've ever seen.
That guy's a horrible, neglectful teacher, and that's not me, but I do love that.
No, not the whole character. Specifically the bit of playing songs to children and asking them to name who wrote them. That was the Zack Ford bit.
Did I tell you that? So to go off topic a little bit, my students were complaining that I would only play instrumental music in class. And I'm like, can you play stuff with words? And I was like, okay. So we're gonna be listening to only stuff from 1971, so I can make my top 100 playlist. So now that's what they listen to. But
your children must hate you.
But real quick more about the bit is. This movie is like 62 minutes long. I think at least a third of it is just Guy playing the song by Animals. It just goes and goes. But this one, I said on Rewatch Pie, has the most devastating in a way to where I feel like we just haven't improved at all as far as our systematic racism through education.
Yeah, it's yeah, we really haven't over time haven't gotten any better at this. Like you can look at the statistics. We know that, your race is dependent on your education attainment and like especially disciplinary levels and like are off by race all the time. It's certainly not an accomplishment.
As a teacher, I do want to backtrack a little bit just to defend my own profession. I will say we haven't got better. All is false because this movie portrays the special ed schools as completely neglectful and just like a daycare. And I would say special ed programs I have experienced that do not function like that. But I do think that sometimes, students of color do get placed in programs maybe unfairly or not given the opportunity, especially how a lot of the public school systems in diverse areas don't receive the same funding as places in other areas, so the opportunity is already decreased automatically. I think that maybe is the more primary issue, maybe not intentional disregarding the kids as much as the systematic disregard for those school districts.
Yeah. I mean, have you ever? I mean, it's definitely an older version, but like I think that was probably very accurate, especially to the times in America. I do think this movie also does the smart thing, which is they specifically bring up education reform in reference to Margaret Thatcher being the education secretary. I think that is very, 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 very intentional that they picked this specific time frame where you can bring it up, and not only because obviously talking about education and saying, man, education isn't equal for everyone, and equality is not a thing, and equity is not a thing across the board. But then being able to tie that, especially to a very, very famous British politician, is obviously going to be more resonant.
Yeah, who also famous kind of fucked education system in Britain. Like she was awful.
Yeah. That was like the most dooming wink moment in the movie. Like you get like, oh fuck, like this doesn't get solved. It doesn't turn out well for them because once they say her name.
Right. Margaret Thatcher, fuck. We're dead.
Let's see. The parents are really good in this.
Yeah, my favorite moment from this entire movie is when, like, she's kind of coming to terms with the fact that her kid can't read. Just like, read this, and just like just the way like she just like embraces her kid with the fact like I'm not mad. Where the kid thinks he's gonna be like in such trouble because he can't read the words on the page, but just like the way she reacts towards him, it's just like it's a very warm moment, and that's my favorite one of the entire movie.
Yeah, there's also a lot of good moments like that. There's the grandfather at the meeting where he gets up and talks about his 17-year-old grandson can't read or write, and he's just like, I didn't go to school, I didn't have these opportunities, but I'm not going to let my, they've been in school. How is the system so broken that somebody has lasted through this many years of school and still is not accomplishing well, which is of course something you compare very favorably to the American system. Be like, there are definitely kids who slip through the cracks all the time, and the teacher goes, oh, you're not very good, but we'll keep passing you, just pass you up so you can get out. And we end up with people who, I mean, I'm sure you've all experienced this as we all went to college. I'm sure we remember being in those classes freshman year, and you have to trade a paper with a kid, and you're reading somebody else's paper, and you're like, dude, you're writing at like a 9-year-old level. How on earth did you get through school? How did you graduate? How did your school fail you to such levels that you graduated high school and you're sitting there in front of me and you can't write an outline or you can't write like a basic, 3-part like a 5-part, like even the most basic writing things you just can't do. It's kind of scary how people somehow manage to get through a system that is supposed to educate them and simultaneously are not competent at any of the things they're supposed to learn.
I think the moment that you brought up of the guys saying this about stuff is also important, broadening the scope of it. Otherwise, it's a very specific problem of people getting put into the special ed schools. But when he goes and say, that's horrible about these schools, but even my grandson is in mainstream education and is also, getting as mistreated and forgotten. So we can see it's not just a special ed problem; it is a general education issue as well, as far as the neglect in a way of getting these kids some upward mobility.
Yeah, I also want to give a shout out to Naomi Ackie in this short. Most people probably recognize her. She played Jana in Rise of Skywalker. I hadn't seen anything outside of Rise of Skywalker aside from this. And yeah, she plays the government official who's investigating these special schools. And yeah, just like the poise she brings to the role, the gravitas, the fact that her mentality is caring about these kids, really wanting to get to the bottom of this. I think she's really good. I hope to see her do more things in the future.
I think there's tons of great performances in this. I said the sister looks like it's played by Tamara Lawrence. I think it's really great. It's a great sister character, just very caring, and they give her enough of her own life and story, but also just make her this consoling thing. Just listening to her read at her brother's side school was kind of very touching. I do shout the mom's name, Charlene White, because this is the performance of all the movies that has grown to me the most. I think she does just own the second half of this movie, between the scene that you talked about, Chance, but also just the final scene of witnessing the quick growth, which I do think is really realistic. I think people can dismiss as how does he go from reading nothing to reading this pretty advanced book? But I think just with the attention and the engagement that she provided, I found that very true. But seeing her reaction to seeing the opportunity that still exists, because it's almost like not that she given up on him, but her hope was kind of getting lost of what, and this was kind of reopening, knowing that she hasn't lost the opportunity for a kid to become successful, that there's still growth if she continues the action that she has started putting into place. And I think that's the best scene in the movie, is the final scene.
It's a good scene.
And also shout out what we're doing it. Joe Martin, who plays Tabitha Bartholomew, who's the secondary teacher at the end. I think she's also really good presence. I think he has a really good knack throughout these films for getting these people who are not name actors, who you have maybe seen in a couple things if you watch specifically British stuff, but he has these really good character actors who have this a really interesting look. They have got really accurate accents. It's just they're just interesting character actors on screen without having any star power behind them.
I think the best performance in all of Small Axe is the young actor Nathan Moses, who plays the boy Ashley. He goes 64, 86, 102.
I remember that kid when they're going back and forth. Yeah, 144.
I think that's an Academy Award-winning math right there.
There is a great moment in that scene where they're like, times tables go up to 13. See, we all live in this dumb society where every times table you're ever given is through 12. And that's why he teaches everyone to think you only do times tables at 12.
That's a real teaching to the test kind of statement there, because it's they didn't say test, they said the curriculum of the state says only to 12, but that's how we say it. The test actually only has to do the skill in this specific way, so that's how we're going to teach it, rather than where the kid's interest lies. The more kind of Montessori progressive approaches. So you want to learn all the times tables up to 100? Let's fucking do it.
And this is a weird thing I started tracking is Kate Dickie is in this from Game of Thrones. This is one of
oh, that's right. That's Liza Aaron, right?
There's 5 or 6 Game of Thrones people throughout the series that randomly pop up in moments, and just gonna shout her out because it's just a random trend I noted while watching this was, wow, a lot of those Game of Thrones actors who are obviously British actors ended up in this. Does anyone have any more thoughts on education, or should we move on to the next one? Let's do it. So the next we want to talk about, I'm going to let Chance go first because I know this is his favorite. Let's talk about Red, White, and Blue, which is the story of Leroy Logan, who is He is basically a scientist who decides to join the police force because he wants to promote change from within, and he becomes like the face of their recruitment drive. And the British police force was not necessarily ready to break break the spawn of racism from the ranks. So his success is that he tried, but not necessarily was as successful as he would have liked. I know you love this one, Chance. Why don't you talk about what in particular this one stands out for you?
I really like when John Boyega plays Caps Kings, but actually this does go to Detroit was one of my favorite movies of 2017, in which John Boyega does play a cop, and like the whole back end of that movie is basically because he was a cop during the whole situation. He's kind of roped in with everyone else, and so like he basically ostracized the black community. And it's interesting that he was the star of this one because this whole movie is basically the same point that last like 20, 30 minutes of Detroit was trying to make. I think for this one, for me, what makes me love this one most out of any of them is the fact that I find Leroy Logan's story and character the most interesting of anyone in Small, as well as the best performance. I think John Boyega crushes it in this film. I think he's excellent. I know he's an actor who he again because of his political stance and stuff he does for his community and people in need. Yeah, I remember he was a time when he was worried about his future career. He keeps turning work like this because I think he's a very good actor. I think he should continue to work. I would love to see him get more roles because I think he's excellent. And I think what works about this is the fact that it really focuses on that struggle between him and his community, how he's basically seen as like a race traitor, because he's going and he's trying to aid a system that oppresses people in his community, but he's not doing it because he believes that's right. He's doing it for the opposite reason. He's doing it because he wants to try and fix that, and he thinks the only way you can do it is within. And I like that he's idealistic. I like what he stands for, but I also like that he's his journey, in fact, to realize that it's not that easy, because like this is just a very like systematically broken. The system is systematically broken. Is like kind of redundancy, but you get what I mean. I think that the journey, like you want him to succeed, but like with every step he takes forward, it takes 2 steps back. It's hard to watch. He goes on a super hard journey, and it's gratifying in a way where like he's getting somewhere, but it's slow going. He's making progress, but it's also slightly heartbreaking in a way just because the way it ends. Like he's not making any like real progress just yet. So yeah, I think that the story of Leroy Logan is what makes me really drawn to the story of Red, White, and Blue.
I mean, it's an amazing story. He's simultaneously a race traitor to his people, and his colleagues look at him as a traitor to them because he doesn't just fall in line with the thing. He's kind of caught between these two worlds, and watching Boyega deal with that is kind of amazing.
And I like that dilemma. I like that no matter what he does, he never seems doing the right thing.
Right. It's also just like I love seeing this on some level because what happened in Star Wars, and he did kind of get the shaft a lot in that trilogy. You do go back to the first one, and you think he's probably going to get a lot larger role, and he does kind of get consistently sidelined in.
He gets progressively sidelined as the movies goes on, and the movies go on.
Yeah. At least in Last Jedi, he's in a different storyline, but he has his own storyline, and then he's got
his own thing going in The Last Jedi.
And then Rise of Skywalker, it's like, yeah, we don't really care about you. You're not really that important. What?
Ironically enough, the black guy got the shaft.
I kind of feel like this happened in Last Jedi too. I would also argue his storyline definitely seems like the B plot comedy.
I mean, it is, but at least at least he has a story, though. At least he has a story in Last Jedi.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think
like the disposable part of it.
I don't think Johnson. Here's the thing. I think that we look at that as disposable. I don't think Johnson looks at that storyline as disposable, and I think that's why he gave it to Boyega, because he wanted to have somebody in that storyline that he knew could perform.
Exactly. And I think that even though the storyline is my least favorite of that entire movie, I love Last Jedi. That's my least favorite part of the movie. I think the thing that keeps me invested in is John Boyega, because he's such a good actor. I love him as Finn.
He really is really good, and that's why I was really happy to see him coming back and being like, "Yes, this is exactly what you should do. You did the blockbuster thing. You made the money, so that's good. It was not the best experience. He was pretty vocal about how now it was not his favorite experience. It was a sort of a shocking occurrence after Rise of Skywalker to see 2 of the 3 lead actors.
All three, actually.
They were not a fans of that. Like there was a lot of this did not turn out the way we wanted it to. And so watching him so quickly get into something else with quality directors and, a quality story and really just quality material to work with was really great to see, because, sometimes people do the blockbuster thing and they don't like the experience they had and they just end up getting shuffled like off to the left. And it's like, all right, well, who's next? We'll get somebody else to be in the blockbusters, and they don't get anything else great. It was awesome to see him go to this. He's really good in this. I'm glad he won a Golden Globe, even though supporting actor is the most nonsensical, ridiculous take I've ever seen.
He's competing against fucking Schitt's Creek, which I love Schitt's Creek, but how is those even comparable?
Biggest problem is the fact that he's the main character of one episode of this series, I guess.
Yeah. I think that's the most of the reason they ran him in supporting is because it
has to be.
He's the lead of one of them.
Exactly. And I feel like when this is eligible for Emmys, he'll be in like best lead of a movie, or a miniseries or movie.
The miniseries movie. He'll probably win that too, I think.
I hope he wins. I really hope he wins.
This is one of the 2 that I really do wish that they had maybe elongated a little bit and then pulled out for Oscar contention, because I think there are 2 of them, 2 of the Small X movies that really could be legitimate Oscar contenders, and that is this one and Mangrove.
Mangrove should be a Best Picture easily.
Mangrove legitimately might be the best movie of the year.
I mean, it's not my favorite in this series, but we'll discuss that. Not to spoil our future episode, we're going to talk about performances, but John Boyega is my best actor of the year in movies. I find the performance remarkable. I think it's the best combination of his just pure movie star shine with, serious acting credit as well. Just because even some small moments, right, it's just like that's what a movie star can do when he's like dancing with his cousin. But I think more really tiny 1-second moment that I love is he's they just had like I don't know if it was Thanksgiving dinner. They had dinner with his family. There's a lot of tension between his dad and but I think it's his aunt, but I don't know if it's his biological aunt. They just call him aunt. This is what I'm trying to figure out on the second watch. His friend's mom, his like best friend's mom. There's a lot of tension going on in that scene. He's already a cop and has all his tension with his dad. He's cleaning dishes, with his friend, and his dad kind of just walks by really grumpily. And Boyega does this like kind of goofy dance, but with still a serious face, and it's just like kind of like fuck this shit, but we're gonna keep going. And that scene is just a remarkable, just being in the moment and being in that character at that point of how that character could react when you're hanging out with your friend, but you're also dealing with, it's kind of like a look at this guy moment. I looked up his upcoming projects. He is still a guy to be hired. There's 7 projects between in development and production, and 1 movie coming out later. Some interesting stuff to look forward to. What are you saying?
I said Pac Rim 3.
That is not on the list.
Please,
and I hope that does not happen. So there's a movie later
about Pac Rim 2. He was better than Charlie Hunnam was in the first one.
That's not a compliment, though.
I mean, it is. Yes, it literally is. It's the biggest problem the first one had.
It's called damning with faint praise, though, I think.
The most important one on here, that's the only one in post-production, because it's only important because it co-stars what we all know, our greatest actress under the age of 30, Olivia Cook. God, this is a bit on the show. I like her a lot, and I'm exaggerating.
Zack made this statement to
she was in my top 5 under 30, and everyone's
actually... Me and former guest Paul Yama, to which both of us were like, no, that's insane. What are you talking about?
She does not. Wow.
She does not have the career for that.
I'm not saying big movies, but the things I watch her and I love it. And Little Fish is a great movie. And
even if you take it, I'm not saying she needs blockbusters.
You didn't watch Little Fish. She's astounding in Little Fish.
Okay.
I'm about to watch Pixies. That's also starting her.
I'm sure Little Fish is game changing.
Game changing. Okay. To keep continued. So some other ones is like a sci-fi movie that has interesting cases. It's with Tiana Paris, who I actually also really love and hope the best for her career. I mean, she's in the MCU now, but I hope
the big one
outside of MCU. There's a Gavin Hood movie. There is a Jeremy Saulnier movie.
That's the one I'm interested in.
Yeah. I think both those, because I think the Gavin Hood movie could be a real like movie star movie. Like he makes movie star vehicles.
Gavin Hood is so iffy though.
Yeah,
he's not really movie star anymore though. The dude's making like freaking drone movies.
You're either gonna get like really great or X-Men Origins Wolverine First Class Origins.
Oh wait, I'm definitely confusing him with someone else.
O'Connor, you're thinking O'Connor, aren't you?
I'm confusing him with Gavin O'Connor.
Yeah, you're thinking his last movies are something called Official
No,
Secrets.
I was like, he's with the guy who directed Warrior and The Way Back. This is like a movie star director. It's Gavin O'Connor.
Although I would watch Gavin O'Onnor direct John
yes,
Boyega.
Yeah, that
John
sounds
Boyega
great.
do a sports movie with Gavin O'Connor. I will watch it.
Or anything. That sounds great. So
he can do an American accent.
Boxing.
He can do an American accent. Have him play Walter Payton in a movie.
Ooh, it's not a bad idea. Or just two. I mean, he had some pretty decent boxing in Red, White, and Blue.
He did.
Let's see that. Let's see the John Boyega boxing.
Here's what you do. In Creed 3, you introduce another son of Apollo Creed, Ali Creed.
This is a great.
And then
pitch.
you have him and Adonis fight.
This is a great pitch because he's fought Europeans. He can't fight another European.
He can. The only person I don't want to fight anyone else's son unless it's another Creed son.
So you're against the whole Mr. T son?
No, please, no Clubber Lang's. I don't want to see him fight Clubber Lang's son. I don't want to see him fight Tommy Gunn's son. I don't want to see him fight Thunder Lips' son.
Nobody wants to see him fight.
I don't want to see Tommy. I don't want to see him fight Tommy Gunn the father.
Tommy Gunn is dead.
Recipes Tommy Gunn, but still,
Tommy Morrison.
The Jeremy Saulnier movie, which has a horribly generic plot summary, but it's called Rebel Ridge. The cast of John Boyega, Don Johnson, and our hero James Cromwell, the great man, and he should be
Don Johnson, Nash Bridges himself.
Yeah,
I'm excited.
Who would have expected this Don Johnson comeback in the late 20s? Look at that mustache. Look at that facial hair. That was built for a comeback.
You would not take Mr. T. You would not take Mr. T's son, played by Winston.
Okay, maybe that wasn't new. Okay, now to bring it out. Fine. He can fight. He can fight Clubber Lang Jr.
And then in the fourth movie, he fights Boyega.
Then he fights Boyega as Ali Creed.
Yeah,
either Boyega or Kaluuya as Ali Creed.
Or we make we do like a 20-year age gap, and we pretend that John Boyega is the son of Pretty Ricky Conlon.
Wait a minute.
Creed 4 Legacy.
There's no way that Boyega wants to do the Ta-Nehisi Coates Superman, right?
What?
Ooh.
Is there any chance, or is he trying to avoid big franchise things now? But maybe having Ta-Nehisi Coates. Yeah,
but you know what? But you know what? The fact that that's the lead, like he is Superman.
Yeah,
I think he would do it.
And I think he would trust like
I'm so invested in Stephon James as Superman at this point.
I don't know, but I guess he's like a perfect fit.
I think Stephon James just has that look.
He does. He does look Superman-ish.
He has like that regal look. You look at him and you're like, that guy looks like he should be the best of them.
Yeah, I would totally buy him as a superhero.
Yeah. We've completely gotten away from Red, White, and Blue.
Red, White, Blue.
Red, White, Blue.
It's awesome. I mean, it's one of those movies that like sometimes there's movies that are really great that there's not a lot to talk about, and this one is like there's not a lot to talk about because it's kind of all in your face and it's obvious. Yes, the police force has problems with race. They've had problems with race for years. They have problems with race now. So the story of someone trying to fix that from the inside, you kind of know what the end result's going to be. But in some ways, this movie is just about really enjoying Boyega's performance and learning about somebody you probably hadn't known about because I didn't know about Leroy Logan before I saw them.
But also at a more intimate level, this movie is super successful because it's taking this big issue of police treatment, but putting it through the lens of this very intimate story between a father and son. It's the kind of classic like they're not seeing each other. Sure, they both have very different opinions on how to approach the incident that happened to his father, but also to approach the injustice that the father just can't seem to understand and relate with John Boyega, but in such an interesting way because it's all in like how do you create social justice and change, and that the father just can't understand that John Boyega has an end goal and can't see the path that leads up to that, which honestly leads to I think my no, because Lover's Rock has a lot of great scenes, but outside of Lover's Rock, my favorite scene in the movie is the final scene.
With his dad
sitting at the table, and that seems like really where they came to kind of meet in the middle ground of him accepting his goal, but also John Boyega kind of learning from his father what a long, hard path this is. That you can see the journey the father has been through, that he's been fighting this, for longer than John Boyega, could be aware of, and it's just starting to lose a little hope. And John Boyega is able to put a little bit of flame there. But I think this is like, in a way, the least hopeful movie of the bunch, because it's kind of like this is such a huge hill to climb through, that it just kind of ends in like a really deep, sad sigh.
Isn't that the scene with the really great quote where he talks about what his mom told him?
Yeah.
That if you don't get an education and I see you digging graves, then I'm going to be sad because you didn't have a choice. But if you get an education and then I see you digging graves, I'll be happy because I know you had the choice and you chose to do something you cared about, which is like a really powerful message and something that I think the movie really does really good job kind of bringing together the two themes of the film, which is his dad's just absolute hatred of the police after what they did to him, and his son's like optimism and hope for a chance to try to fix it from the inside. Honestly, he's such a brave character. Like, can you imagine walking in front of the police board and being like, I'm joining the police because I want to fix it from the inside? And like, he's so firm in his convictions and honest and open with them the entire time. Like, it's really impressive that is a personal trait is amazing.
He tells them during his like recruitment that like, I'm here to make change because I don't like what is happening. So he's always open and upfront and honorable in how he serves the job, and it makes it to like, if you have more people willing to stand up and fight that with him, maybe true change can be made. But it's just he's the small axe. Not to like pick up on the title, but we need a lot of small axes to cut down the tree, and hopefully the inspiration can lead to something. But also I think his like righteous anger in the number of spots comes out so naturally. I think that's other performed things when he's starting to get really frustrated with the other cops, when when they don't even go to back him up, and he comes down because he goes in with his control. It almost in like a teacher way, sometimes you have controlled anger, like you let out your outburst because you feel like strategically that is the right move to make. And I feel like John Boyega and his performance in it, to where we know that character, that seemed like a very strategic outburst, like that he knew the right moments to make his point when he needs to be angry, and there's still so much control that I think that character has that makes him so honorable.
Yeah, he's so good at playing the different emotions, like when he's getting pressed in from different sides, when he's being jovial and fun, when he's being goofy and silly, when he's just livid at people, when he loses respect for people but still has to act respectful. Like, his just ability to handle all those different emotions and feelings and thoughts is just it's incredible. He's incredible in the film.
And be Black Superman, John Boyega.
All right. I think we're going to move on to the next one. Final shout out, Mark Stanley from Bren from Game of Thrones, who is his running partner.
Who was from Game of Thrones?
Bren, the guy who holds the gate.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah. He's his running partner in this film. Mark Stanley.
Mark Stanley. That's right.
Mark Stanley.
Is this how it feels when I try to talk the music parts of movies and you're talking Game of Thrones things? You feel so left out of the conversation.
Sometimes. Have you not seen Game of Thrones, Zach?
I watched one episode, pretty much the first episode soon after it came out, and never watched another episode.
Wow.
You're missing on like 6.5 seasons of great television.
I cannot.
I'll catch up.
I'm actually shocked that you watched the first episode and then we're like, no, I'm not going to watch it anymore. That's kind of shocking me. Because I watched the first episode in the middle of like early season 3 when it's going on. And I was like, I have to watch this. And I basically binged it all in like 4 or 5 days because like I couldn't stop watching.
I watched it on a megabus, sharing a laptop with my brother, and probably sharing single headphones. So it wasn't like the prime experience.
Well, you have HBO Max now. Get on that bitch.
Is this a problem that like I'm sure all of us can remember exact viewing experiences from 10 years ago that I can tell you I saw the Game of Thrones episode on Megabus with my brother.
First time I saw RoboCop 2014, I was on a plane, I almost opened the door.
He's like, I'm out. He's like, please take me.
Good luck, everybody.
Let's move on to Mangrove, which is really the one they should have released as a single film because it would have. I think this movie would have gotten like a ton of Oscars if it was in contention. Mangrove's really simple plot. Covers the story.
It's not.
It is to explain. It's the story of the Mangrove restaurant. This guy named Frank Rizzo starts the Mangrove restaurant. The police are racist and don't like seeing a restaurant that supports a different culture and serves different food. They start raiding it and attacking it. The community pushes back. There is a riot. The Mangrove Nine are arrested, and then the rest of the film features the trial of the Mangrove Nine, which is a really big trial in the UK, I guess, which is interesting because it feels like this 2020 was a big year for movies about
group trials,
famous rights trials. I actually want to start there, which is that I watched this the first time, not having seen Trial of the Chicago 7, and then I rewatched it, having seen the Trial of the Chicago 7. This movie looks even better when you like. It's a great movie originally, but when you compare it to the Trial of the Chicago 7, it is just so good because this movie doesn't do any of the performative stuff that does. It doesn't try to do the fake ending where like suddenly they have like a celebration ending that doesn't exist. This movie is just, I think, way more impactful and way more interesting than that because in some ways this movie is just, it feels more true to life. Like the judge in this case doesn't feel like the worst person on earth. He's just kind of like not taking anyone's crap. Like he's just going to reject a bunch of stuff. Like he's not necessarily on their side, but he's not Frank, I am the worst human being on the face of the planet. Like literally the devil incarnate, Angela from
God damn you, Angela.
He's like literally trying to be the worst person. This movie's just, I love this movie. This is my personal favorite of the 5. I think that the extra time in this one is really, really valuable. Like I cannot imagine trying to put this down to 60 minutes or 70 minutes or 80 minutes like some of the others. I do think giving it the full 2 hours is really, really important because it's the one that just really needs that time to marinate. I love the fact that they spend so much time setting up the Mangrove. Like you could have done this movie where you just had the riot and the arrest right at the beginning and they jump straight into the trial. But I think there's so much value to letting people see what kind of community the Mangrove builds and how important it is to everyone around it, and then why they fight so hard when they feel threatened by it, or the fact that they feel like we need this. This is our place to go. This is like matters. And then you have all the scenes of like, you know, some little old lady walking in being like, I've been saving this every Sunday. I'm going to give you my money because this place makes me feel like I have a home in this country. Like the value of community and the value of feeling like you belong. And for so many people in this movie, they belong because of the Mangrove. So when the police, you know, turn their sights on it, you really get like you get to see what happens because people fight back when they feel like their culture and their way of life is threatened.
What is very important about that aspect that I think often gets forgotten in, you know, a lot of social justice movies, I'd say especially social justice movies that can be directed by white people, is viewing the Black experience purely as a struggle, and forgetting the humanity and the life and the joy, and seeing the moments of joy that they have that community is very important in one, making them real people and making them into real community, but also, you know, being able to attach our hearts to these characters and you know, fall in love with them as full-fleshed humans rather than purely feeling kind of an empty sympathy.
No, yeah, and I do agree. I think I agree with what you said. The fact that they get the extra time to make the Mangrove, like they take the time to like really establish the community aspect of this film, which is why when the Mangrove is in jeopardy, that's why you feel so hard for it, because like you understand like why this location is so important to everybody, because it's an integral part of their lives at this point, because like, you know, it's something that is familiar in a sense. And like, I think the trial scenes are really well done. I love the cross-examinations. I think that they do. McQueen does a really good job building these characters with like not much time. Like, well, you very quickly understand what each of the Mangroves. It's 8 of them, right? 7. Yeah, 7. Nope, 9. There's 9 of them.
It's 9.
There's
Chicago 7.
Chicago 7.
Mangrove 9.
Chicago 7. Hateful 8. Mangrove 9. There we go. Yeah, the 9 of them, I do get distinct personalities. Like you very quickly understand what each of them is about. But I also do. I really enjoy the lore put by Jack Loudon, who I told Paul that I watched it. I swear, like if this movie had this movie been made like 5 to 10 years earlier, this role would have been played by Simon Pegg, because he felt very Simon Pegg. He felt very Simon
Lawyer,
Peggish
yeah.
to me.
Yeah, that performance is almost my least favorite part. I think just there's the moment that I in there that I find the closest to the Trial of Chicago 7, a little like courtroom trophy, which is when he gives these kind of righteous faces, you know, when they all start chanting and looks at the judge like, oh, there's nothing I can do. He kind of like playing up a little bit the righteousness of his character a little too much. Like look at this like big moment that I did. I think within that character, I hate that look he gives the judge. Fucking hate it, but especially just compared to all the other performances within that, you know, brought up, you know, the patience of the pacing of the movie, but I think also the patience of the camera in this movie is really astounding. The way it stops multiple, he does this the whole series, but multiple scenes, either, you know, in the kitchen after it gets raided, watching, you know, the pan kind of rattle down so you can like live and breathe in that moment and feel that pain. Also, you know, the multiple close-ups that he gives, a very kind of like Jonathan Demme-esque close-ups that gives characters when Frank Triglow is thrown into the not like a cell in the courtroom, like a restraint cell, after he was, you know, mistreated by the guards, and they got to throw him in there pretty roughly, and you kind of watch him let out all his anger and bang the door and shout, and you just get this close-up on his face, and that the real pure emotion that he's going through in that moment. You know, one of the most powerful acting moments, you know, within the series, but the camera does a great job. It really trusted the performance there. And he just does that routinely. Steve McQueen does that routinely. A lot of trust on you know, the shots, a lot of trust on the actors to own those shots.
Yeah, we got to talk about Sean Parks. He is the find of this entire series of films. Like you can look at his IMDb and you're like, oh, okay, he's got a career. He's been in some movies. He's been in some TV shows. It's a lot of British stuff. I don't think anyone going to this thought Sean Parks was this good. He's legitimately Oscar worthy in this film. He is that good. It's an amazing performance. He has so much rage, so much life, so much indignation. He has this really strict sense of justice and wanting to make sure he gets it, but he also acknowledges, but he's not an idiot. He's intelligent in the sense he wants his justice, but he also won't play into the performative nature of some of the other characters who are like, I'm just going to yell and act out. Like he's very clearly like, I want justice and I'm going to make them give me justice using their system to give me justice, using their laws to give me justice. And I'm going to play by the rules and get my justice. And he's just such a towering performance. Like even when he goes on the street and he yells at the cop cars and he starts yelling about, we serve spicy food. He's just got this amazing like strength and vitality. And he is the heart of the mangrove and kind of the heart of the film. He's amazing.
He's phenomenal. He's phenomenal in this fucking film, man. Yeah, I do agree. Like if this were releases separately, I do think that there'd be serious consideration for him for Best Actor. As it should be, because he's phenomenal. And yeah, I think obviously he's a fine. I do hope that he gets more mainstream work in a sense, because I think people should take notice of him. Much like with Boyega, I think people should take notice of him and how great he is in this show. Because like you're right, like he is the emotional crux of the movie. Like it starts and ends with his character. So and he has the most weight to carry out of any cast member in this movie because it is his restaurant, and like you feel it, man, and you really want to see this guy get his justice.
Yeah, and to make some comparisons to Alex Weidel, because this is I think both of these are about the political evolution of their characters. I would say Frank Triglow not really at all radical, but still finding his political voice. Because I think for half the movie, he's like, I just want to run my business. I want to have this restaurant sustain. I don't want to cause trouble. But he has to learn his fight, learn the reason for his fight, and find some hope in that he can overcome it. And I think maybe a little more specificity through his his own personal and specific struggles compared to Alex Weidel is what makes that discovery more satisfying than Alex Weidel's kind of discovery in his voice. I think maybe also just a wider array of personalities around him that he kind of gets brought into this community, this of just fighters with Malachi Kirby's character, Letitia Wright, that he's really able to kind of learn from them. The power of their voice and speaking up and fighting for what you deserve.
Yeah, let's talk about them too. So Malachi Kirby plays Darkus Howe, and Letitia Wright plays Althea Jones. Althea Jones is a member of the Black Panther Party, and Darkus Howe is a barrister who is somewhat of a revolutionary, a speaker for racial justice, and they're the two who choose to represent themselves in the stand, and in fact provide some of the best courtroom scenes in the film.
I've never forgotten that whole like police box argument.
Oh, it's so good.
Like, three of you looking through a box this big.
Like, did you send like this? Did you send like this? Who was in the middle? Like, it's such great questioning. Good. And they're so good at being, they're loading everything they say with courtesy and platitudes and sir and full titles and everything. But they are also mocking them and showing what a ridiculous nothing case they have against these people. That they're, oh, you're the doctor and you're examining for bite marks 3 days later. You guys all stared through a 2-inch slot. Oh, you're the only one who wrote down that they could hear chanting. Why didn't the other ones write down? You joined the force 18 years ago and you're like 20 ranks below somebody else who joined the same time as you. Why did that happen? Like, there's so much power. And even Loudon talks about this in the film. Is like when they start talking about self-representing, the other, what's his name? The older another attorney is, I'm going to blank on. Oh, Richard Cordray. Right. Is the other barrister. And he's like, no, this is a terrible day. And Loudon actually is kind of a little bit of a maverick lawyer in this. And he's like, it's actually a really good idea because you can get these people, they're smart, they can do the practice, they can cross-examine, there'll be extra power letting them cross-examine. And just like doing as much as possible to play within the system while also showing that the system is full of shit and, not acting the way it's supposed to. And that if they want to protect, they can sit up there and wear their uniforms and their robes and their wigs and pretend that this is some kind of just process, but exposing that system for how ridiculous it is. And we're like, the idea of we're supposed to set somebody on the stand and be like, oh, he's a police officer, so you should believe him. It's just something that I think rings really true even now. Just the idea, like, of course, why wouldn't you question a police officer's judgment? Why are we supposed to believe that police officers are necessarily coming from a place of good faith? I mean, obviously, we've seen years and years of police officers not coming from places of good faith. This movie is just filled with so many good performances, and that's some ways like he's the main role is so good, and then you have so many other smaller roles around it, just like filling it in. And that's why it works so well. Nothing.
No, but I agree. No, I mean, I think you're saying. I think I feel like the ensemble for this is probably the most ensemble besides the next one. Probably the most ensemble heavy movie, but that one's also not as acting heavy, which we'll go through. But yeah, like no other film in this hinges on this many people having to be great. And I feel like McQueen, he does really well with ensemble. Like we saw him do with 12 Years a Slave, we saw him do with Widows, and it's no different. It might be the best like whole ensemble he's put together in his career.
Yeah, and this even the characters we don't necessarily like. Alex Jennings as the judge is good. Samuel West as the opposing barrister is good.
PC Pulley.
Sam Spruill as PC Pulley is actually an interesting character because it's such an interesting commentary about how these really small people with little accomplishments feel so big by throwing their weight around. And if the system protects them and continually justifies away their bad actions, they can continue to act in this way. But he's sort of like, he's like that thing you can't show the light of day. And the minute you start exposing him to the world, he instantly loses all power and credibility. And the first minute she starts questioning him, like he's fine on the stand while everyone's going, how many awards do you have? Like, but the minute you expose him for what he is, which is this bully, criminal abuser of the people around him, like racist, he just folds really fast.
I think that Steve McQueen shows, has enough political intelligence to treat that character right. That I think other directors not. I would say, including in Detroit, that I know Chance loves, but I think the way they treat, I'm forgetting the actor's name, but the kind of the main villain of the movie. Will Poulter's character, as in, instead of addressing this as a systematic issue, it kind of puts it on one, bad actor, one bad thinker. And I think that could happen with PC.
One bad actor, damn, that's just drive by on him.
In a way, it seemed like it's just like a super villain in the case in Detroit, like it's just a super hateful person rather than being a systemic issue. But I think PC Pulley can come off this like he is just like an idiot, and they make him come off as an idiot. So if they put so much focus on that being the primary issue behind the Mangrove incident, I think it could come off a little short-sighted because they'd be like, this is just because they hired one other person. But I think he's so smart and putting enough attention to the systematic injustices happening within the courtroom and how they're treated and how the judge is handling certain situations, because they do, I think, especially with the judge, they don't make him seem like an out and open acting out racist, more like an old-fashioned following the court policies, this old-fashioned how a courtroom should go, without realizing how those old-fashioned policies have a lot of unfair biases towards it. I think giving just as much attention to that procedural issues as much as PC Pulley, I think helps it, seem like the broader issue that it is, rather than, one horrible person causing, this racism.
Yeah, I mean, they also do a really good job setting that up. Like, Paulie isn't working alone. What he does only works because he's playing cards and somebody pulls a jack and they go out and they nick the first black guy. And he tells, he's in a car with two other constables and they just go along with it. Their silence, their complicity to his actions is really important. And the fact that he's had complaints against him and his superiors haven't done anything about it. Like, it's really a statement on just the complicity of the system. He's the villain in sight of us during the film, but he's really just a project of everybody else, ignoring their duties and ignoring what's right and just kind of letting the injustice continue.
Yeah, he is an effect of the greater cause, which is the system itself. He's only able to exist rather than just being a spontaneous virus that occurred. Yeah.
Any more thoughts on Mangrove, or should we continue on?
We can continue on.
All right. So we've reached
I forgot one more.
No, go ahead.
I don't know what it was about this film. Like, I started craving Jamaican food after this movie, so I literally, after I watched Mangrove, I had jerk chicken for the next 4 days after I saw it.
Right before quarantine, the great Jamaican restaurant in my neighborhood closed down, and I wonder if she was like seeing the future, because she was mainly just the owner was like,
was it Rabbi Miss Cleo?
No, but she was like, we're old, my children don't want to do it, so we're just gonna shut down. And then that was a quarantine hit next week, and all restaurants closed, so she knew what was happening. But I do miss that restaurant.
Smart move. Let's continue on to the final Small X film, which is Zack's favorite, Lovers Rock, which
they
does not have a ton of a plot, if we're being honest.
Nope. It's Jamaican House Party. That's it.
There's moments.
There are moments in the film
that
have importance. There's moments to talk about, but ostensibly there is a party for a girl's 17th birthday party, and people choose to go, and then human interactions occur inside the party.
Yeah,
love, conflict, people being a jackass,
sexual danger,
sexual.
There's a real predator character, which, interestingly enough, I did not realize till the rewatch. I had kind of slipped past the fact that the party was for a 17-year-old girl, and he's a fucking grown-ass man. So which makes that.
The first time before he talked, I was convinced that was Chance the Rapper, but it wasn't. It's been a weird role.
That'd be strange if it was. I mean, I know. I think he's Jamaican, but it's not like British Jamaicans.
Zach, tell us why you love Lovers Rock.
So I just to add to the plot a little bit is that Super Queen has opened up that this is the one he kind of dedicated to his aunt, kind of based on his aunt's stories of, sneaking out at night to go to these parties to then wake up in the morning for church, which is what ostensibly who's the lead, what she goes through. You see her sneak out, and then when she gets back, she really gets making out of bed to go to church. So I think he is trying to bring, the experience of that generation, advanced generations to life. And as I said before, when talking about Mangrove, the importance of not just, experiencing the struggles that this community went through, he's also found it equally important that to see the joy and the harmony between the community as well. So we can to see them as see this community having full lives. And I deeply connect to the power of music. Also, that's a general theme that runs through a lot of my favorite movies. And this movie, I think, better than any other movie, exhibited the emotional catharsis that community dancing and listening to music can create, and sharing that experience with others. And that's why I think this is really should have been the end of the series in general, because it would provide that cathartic release to all the pain that we experienced in the first 4 movies, to just kind of have a moment to live outside that in this kind of safe zone in this party, and experience and release it together with people around us. And there's so many different kinds. There's pure goofy joy with the kung fu fighting scene kind of earlier on, where you just kind of see them having fun with each other, enjoying up, and then the best scene of the year with silly games, which is lengthy. It's like a 12-minute long scene of having that kind of sing along, where it's just really, really like an emotional release there, and then the more like raucous, almost like mosh pit scene later on that I can't tell you the name of the song, but the more just pure like anger kind of coming out, and that's like the most masculine moment in any of these movies. But I just find that emotional understanding of music right on and very powerful, and that's why I love this movie.
It is an important part of the series in that it really does kind of break the trend you see it sometimes with Black stories, where like a lot of Black stories are focused on pain and suffering and like all the atrocities, and obviously that is a important part of the story, but it is not the only part of the story. And so I do appreciate that there is, among all these stories of police brutality and trials and people going to prison and education systems working against people, but there is just a story about like the power of community and connection, and the idea of like the one night where you just walk into a party and you see somebody you just find really attractive, and suddenly you end up dancing with them all night. Just like that simple power of connection and that simple power of attraction. It's just, it's simple, but it's incredibly powerful at the same time. And I think watching this story is intoxicating, getting kind of drawn in with them. Like it doesn't have the moral, it doesn't have like the moral point, or like it's not trying to make a larger point like some of the other ones, but it is just like, you just get drawn in and you're just happy watching people go to a party, which especially in 2020 is a really impactful thing, because this is something that like doesn't exist in the world right now. And, in some ways that makes it even more powerful because it's so different from the life that we're all living.
Yeah, I do think that I watched this one last out of all 5 of these, which I would recommend everyone do, because it's a nice way to be like, get your ass kicked, get your ass kicked, get your ass kicked, get your ass kicked. Have fun for a night. And so, but yeah, I do think that Steve McQueen does a great job highlighting struggle, Black or otherwise. See hunger, shame, to see what I'm talking about. But I think that his strength in this one is highlighting joy. I do think that he puts together like Lover's Rock it's less of a movie, more of an experience. But unlike something like Dunkirk, where I don't connect with, I do connect with this because they do build some care, they do build some likability and some sense of, it's a party you want to be at. And Lucas is shaking his head because I just like
the unnecessary shot at Dunkirk. There's nothing to do with Lover's Rock. We're just like, let's take a shot at Dunkirk.
Can resist. But yeah, I do think that the way that we put together this experience and just make you fully invested, and there's a party that you want to be at. And I find that massively impressive. I don't find it as the way that it's lower on my list because I don't find it as interesting as more plot-driven sections of small acts. The ones that have more, emotional or actual conflict going on. But as like a singular movie where it's just like, hey, we just want to come in, we want to have fun. It works on that level, and I do really enjoy that aspect of it.
in a way, this is like his spin on like Dazed and Confused, or like a 70s Altman movie of these writing ensembles. And I do think it's remarkable, like these just great and very like acutely aware moments of different characters, like even characters, people sometimes that you haven't even seen until, you know, a moment that they might have a moment that you just still can attach a lot of feeling and emotion to it. Even so, I believe it's a birthday party for like a 17-year-old, 16-year-old, and she's kind of the one that undergoes a little bit of sexual danger as well throughout the film. But then, you know, they gave her, even she's probably like the 9th most focused on character within this movie, but gets her, you know, moment upstairs of when her friend's like consoling, and then there's maybe some sexual attraction as well that, you know, you didn't experience that much time with either of them, but that moment you feel like you get everything that they're feeling and going through. And I think that's the magic with great director, is that you can give a character 1 minute of screen time and you can still fully relate to their experience and their emotions and the time that they're given. And I think that's throughout this whole movie as it navigates from character to character. I think also it's just damn ass sexy. It's real sexy. Because going with the silly
game,
it
is a sexy shot movie.
Yeah, because with silly games, which is honestly like a roller coaster of a scene, there's so much going on and that throughout the song, because it starts off when they're all dancing. It's like a real sexy, like there's like groins around groins, and there's just a lot going on. And then there's the moments of, you know, danger within the middle of that scene of him taking, you know, walking out with the kind of sexual predator character, walking out with a girl you just kind of know it's not going to be up to anything. You learn to not trust that guy, to where then it breaks from that, gives enough attention to then go to the sing along where you see, you know, there's the man in the deep voice kind of scene, and he just, you know, brings so much kind of real pain being released in his sing along. And the girl that you see, or woman earlier that you see like preparing the meals and singing silly games at the beginning of the movie is back also getting her. You just know that this is like her Dan loves hitting those high notes, but at this point it's so much more felt. Like she's not just hitting these high notes, but she's like feeling those notes in that moment so much. And the scene's just remarkable in how many different vibes and different experiences that you see all these characters going through at the exact same, you know, moment of the song. And of course you always get the like DJ guys vibing throughout it. They're my favorite.
Yeah, like you're right. It does have this kind of incredible quality of like every character is memorable and interesting, even if we see them once. Like the doorman is interesting, the DJ is interesting. Right. There's so many, but there's so many just like they don't have to be interesting for the story to work. You could just have the story focused on Franklin and Martha, and that would be the story that you could focus on. But in some ways, that's kind of the brilliance of McQueen, is he just pulls in all the other smaller characters. Even from the beginning scene, you start the beginning scene, and there's some old guy in the house, and you're like, why is he like? And then there's the people are bringing in the equipment, and they're walking past the kitchen of people cooking. Like there's just it's so full of like life and humanity. And it also even has it has like even a couple moments where it does touch on like the you know, the more important you know, more heavy stuff. You know, Martha tries to follow her friend out in the street and gets yelled at by some white boys, and runs back towards the house and happens to run into a very, very scary looking black dude who rightfully so scares those white guys off like real fast. And that's like, but it's such a small moment. But it's also like it's really smart of McQueen, because it means that he can make a movie that's a lighthearted party movie while also not retracting completely from what his entire series has been about. Like he's not pretending that this party lives in some fantasy world where it's not in this fake world, because there's still the scenes like white people are still a threat in that moment, or Franklin and Martha go back to his work, and then the white guy who looks younger than him is very condescending and treats him like a child. There's these moments that kind of remind you that it's still in the world of the other four movies, while still being this almost like fantasy like thing when they're inside dancing and listening to the music.
Yeah. Going back to just small characters as well that you feel like, you know, is the doorman's girlfriend. I don't think has a line, and she says like one shot of like entering the party is in the background a little bit, but just, you know, between her look and her posture and her facial expressions, I feel like in some way, I won't say I get her, but like I get a vibe, and I feel like I understand her. I say for sure those two people are the smartest people at the party, and they know it, and I want to be their friends. And she doesn't have a line. She's my favorite character.
I don't think she has a line in the movie either. Groins around crying.
But
I swear, if there was any point in this moment where an orange is going to break out, it was right in that scene.
It's hot. It's sexy. They're sweating. They're feeling it. Like they really do a good job of putting you in the middle of it.
Yeah, it's the perfect like moment for them where everyone's right. It's like the perfect song, the perfect atmosphere, the perfect person up for that moment, and it was all just kind of literally and metaphorically forming together.
Right before they all start going to get their asses beat again the next day.
Yeah.
I mean, though it is, they do a really smart thing, which is that they make the dance scenes and the musical scenes realistic and human, rather than trying to make them something flashy. Like a lot of times, movies make the mistake where they're like, "Oh, there's a song comes under the party," but they make it too much like a 1960s golden age musical where it gets too flashy and too good, and like. Yeah. It looks like real people dancing. Like they're not doing some choreographed thing. They're not all doing the same thing. No, you can see people make mistakes. There's like a humanity to it, but that's what makes it work. Oh, it's so good.
Doing the kung fu fight in the full silliness, and they know it's silly other way. They're not doing great dancing. They're doing the cheesy ass kung fu.
It reminds me a lot of that the scene from Black Klansman where Ron Stallworth meets Laura.
I would say. He dances real good in that movie, though, so I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, but I mean, like a scene where it feels like a natural scene. It's like, hey, we're gonna go to this club, we're gonna play this song, we'll go have what's gonna happen. Let's just go.
Yeah, that's actually a good comparison. Yeah, they're very similar.
But yeah, just a lot of trust because this really is like 30 minutes of this movie. Half of it is watching people dance, at least, if not more. But he still makes it emotionally rewarding. He knows how to capture, those moments in a way that does have some forward motion for these 50 characters that tells us something about them every single second. Even though there's 30 or 40 minutes of dancing, I feel like there's no wasted moment.
It really does. I'm not gonna say make House Party like House Party 2, but it does make me want to see Steve McQueen's House Party.
Yeah. Quick shout out to Michael Ward and Amra Ja St. Aubin, who are Franklin Cooper and Martha Trenton, our titular couple. They're just wonderful together. They're they just really work together, and it's kind of like a real couple in some ways because they have the moment where somebody says something stupid and then has to apologize for it. Like it's not like a perfect fairy tale. They don't click perfectly. They're not an instant connection, but there is something there and they can both feel it from the first minute they see each other. And that's why they kind of keep, they get drawn apart a couple times, but they keep coming back together.
I think another pretty special moment of this movie is that at some point, I think it's her brother comes into the party and they cousin. Okay. And they do enough to exhibit that, he definitely has some troubles going on in his life. There's a lot of, tension between him and his cousin. And it seems like the whole family, and it seems like something's up, but Steve McQueen never feels the need to just tell us the issues or be explicit about what this guy is going through. Cause that's not the important part. The important part is just the emotion. And that's where you get the most kind of exaggerated transition between how someone's feeling coming in to what that party was able to do to be that release and be that kind of change of mind that he needed at that moment to cool down from whatever was happening.
Yeah. It's
wonderful. And just the welcomeness of the DJs. They're like, you need to be here with us. Like, you're one of us right now. We see what you're going through. Let's come jam with us. Take the mic.
I definitely started, moving a little bit to the music while you're watching this. I feel like it's almost impossible to sit still. It's infectious. You get those things happening and you're like, it makes you want to dance along with the movie.
Makes you want to go find someone's groin to go on your groin.
Yeah, it made me want to wrap my groin around other groins. Can this be the new name of our podcast? We don't really have a good name. Can we just be Groin Around Groin podcast?
Groin Around Groin.
Yeah, I mean, the only problem is if we do that, then people are going to expect us to cover a different type of movie on a show.
I'm not against this. We're going to do Fuck Month.
Cover the Emmanuel series.
That's way too softcore. We're going all the way.
Did it say something to how I'm not fit for the show because I don't really know what that means?
It's like softcore
Yeah,
Okay.
it was a softcore film series from the 2000s, I think.
It's like Cinemax, Skinemax stuff.
Yeah.
Zack and Lucas podcast covered Deep Throat.
We should. That'd be interesting.
We cover the Pam Anderson sex tape.
This will be the end of my career. Because we found Mr. Ford has a porn podcast. And
I don't know, man. I think you'd be really popular with the kids. I think that'd be very cool.
Kids be like, damn, Mr. Ford, I want to be in that dude's class.
this is exactly where I thought the show would end. I was talking about her porn podcast.
Does anyone have any final thoughts on Lovers Rock before we talk about the series as a whole?
No, I'm good.
Okay. I want to bring up one thing we haven't talked about, which is I think really important to the entire series, is I watch these movies with subtitles because the accents are very thick, very accurate, but I also think really important. Like, I actually love the fact that I needed subtitles to understand them at all times, because I think that McQueen was like, I am going to do, authentic West African accents, and I am not going to tone it down for an audience that may not be used to hearing that. I think that's actually a hugely important part of the entire series.
I started with subtitles, but like absolutely, I got the 30 minutes into Mangrove, and because like my grandmother, she's an Islander, so her accent is very similar to this, and like it was like 30 minutes into Mangrove, I was like, wow, is it weird that I can understand every single word they're saying? I get flashbacks to hanging with my grandmother's house.
That's good. I feel like that's exactly what McQueen would want, though. Is like you have the experience and the understanding of the language to understand it. As someone like me who doesn't, like, I actually applaud him for making a movie that is unflinching in its use of the accent, and is not like, because I feel like there's a lot of times you watch movies and it's like, okay, you gave your characters accents, but you also toned the accents down so that the average American viewer could watch this movie and understand every word. Like, I actually applaud them for the fact that, like, how accurate it is and how much it does require of you as a viewer to engage with the language.
Unless you're Brad Pitt and Snatch, then you're like, he has no fucks given.
That's the one version of it where you just, or Tom Hardy in every movie.
Or Tom Hardy in anything.
Or me on this podcast.
or Jeff Bridges in anything after 2015.
Yeah, basically. Any other overarching thoughts of the whole series? Themes?
Yeah, no, I think that, like I said at the top of this, I think like he touches on a lot of themes that are very timely and they have international play. They don't just work for if you grew up in that area or if you know about these stories. They work on a personal level, and I think that's where we expect this. I think that this is Steve McQueen's. It's a definition kind of like, Luke saying we're sports guys. It's like you get like a really like late round draft pick that you hear is good, but it's a very like low risk, high reward type of thing. I feel like this is like a low risk, high reward type of project to where like, this probably was super cheap. He did it in a probably short amount of time, but it was so personal and it was so expansive that like if this worked, it was going to be seen as a high reward type of thing. I feel like you're seeing that because this is it's not my favorite Steve McQueen movie, but it's maybe the achievement of his career.
It is interesting how it is interesting for a guy who basically did a movie that won Best Picture and dominated the Oscars. He is almost talked about as small axes Steve McQueen now, because this feels so like personal to him.
Also because he's like rarely makes movies. Like, please make more movies, Steve McQueen.
I think he's more often described as not the actor Steve McQueen. That might be the primary.
That's also true, but yeah, I feel like
this documentary is going to come out. He has movies coming out.
It's true. This is true. So I wanted to do two things before we say goodbye to our wonderful audience, which is, first off, pick our one standout performance. I'm going to let Chance start, and we're each going to pick a different one. So if somebody takes your favorite, just pick a different one. Chance, what's the standout performance for you for the Small Axe?
I mean, I already kind of said I was talking about the movie, but John Boyega in Red, White, and Blue. For everything that we said when we talked about Red, White, and Blue.
Absolutely. Good point. Pick. Zach, who's your standout performance?
I won't take Frank Chickwell. Or what's your name, Sean Parks, so I can let you have him.
Thank you.
Because I'm gonna go fresh in my rewatch. I'm going with Charlene White, the mom in Education, just to give someone attention that hasn't got as much attention in other media outlets for Small Axe. I think she's amazing.
Absolutely. And yes, as Zach said, I will pick Sean Parks in Mangrove. I think if they had run this as a movie, he would. I mean, I'm gonna be honest. I'm counting this in my best of the year picks for movies and for performances. Sean Parks is my best actor.
Mine's Boyega. So
Mine's Boyega too.
Yeah. I think Boyega will be in there. Which is incidentally, we'll be talking about when you can see those results in a little bit. And the last thing I want to do, which is personal rankings of the top 5. Chance, why don't you go 5 to 1 for us? Rank the 5 smallest movies.
So I would go Alex Weidel, Education, Lovers Rock, Mangrove, Red, White, and Blue.
Fair. Zach, what about you?
Alex Weidel, Education, Red, White, and Blue, Mangrove, Lovers Rock.
All right, and then I would agree. I feel like Education and Alex Weidel are kind of in the bottom. Like I would put that in the bottom tier. Alex Weidel, Education, Red, White, and Blue, Lovers Rock, and then Mangrove is my number 1. On rewatch, Mangrove jumped. Lovers Rock. I feel like there's more there to rewatch, and Lovers Rock is really enjoyable experience, but there's less to dig into on multiple viewings, and that's why I think that Mangrove jumped ahead for me.
You have horrible taste. There's so much to dig into in every second, and it is going to be a hard one to beat as my favorite movie of the decade, I'm sure.
Wow. Zach's already locking his best of the decade.
See you in 2030.
Until the Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood sequel comes out, Lovers Rock will be my favorite.
Or like Wendy
Muppet.
2 or something.
Yeah. Or Muppets Peter Pan. What if they do Peter Pan with the Muppets? Can we make it an episode without me mentioning Peter Pan or Curious Case of Benjamin Button?
I only mentioned Wendy because I was watching that earlier, and
the Curious Case of Wendy the Frog.
I like this.
Can we do something on camera right now so we have Chance as witness? I guess Coho could be our witness later. Maybe we should save it.
We can do it. Go ahead. What do you want to?
I want to make an Oscars bet on our predictions that we were going to make.
Okay.
I guess this has already happened by the time this episode comes out, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, Zach, we will do this. There will be an episode.
I don't understand the chronology of anything. Well, it's because they're off camera and then do a Skype on camera with Coho.
This is the problem when you shoot episodes out of order and Zach does not
Everyone
know
knows
timeline.
I'm calling my shot now, so you hear after the fact and know I was right. I'm going to be destroyed Lucas at Oscar predictions, and there will be some Curious Case of Benjamin Button watching.
Dude, last year I literally missed 2 of them.
So did I.
Chance know this because Chance to be 1. We basically were like 97% accurate or something. We had
I was this close to swerving on Parasite for Best Picture.
I can go copy Gold Derby odds too, Lucas.
Then why don't?
It's not about copying Gold Derby's odds. It's looking at Gold Derby's odds and knowing when you pick the favorite versus when you don't pick the favorite. That's why you win. If you pick just the favorite, you won't win.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm doing Oscar bet now. Oscar wins.
Oh, we might be doing both.
Okay.
Fun fact, I have not told you about that. Yes, we have lots of Oscar content with
that's already happened.
Yes, we have Oscars content, both directions. Co-Oscars founder Caleb Coho will be appearing a lot. We will try to get him to have 4 different hairstyles, so we can get 4 different color hairs for his 4 episodes, because that'll be fun. Any final thoughts on Small Axe, gentlemen?
It's an excellent piece of cinematic achievement that everyone should go watch.
Hey,
absolutely.
And also it makes it seem like it's a hard watch, and it is emotionally, but it's not as far as cinematically. I still think it's very accessible.
The being split up helps it tremendously.
Yeah, it still functions very well as pure entertainment as well as important social justice content.
Yeah. Actually, before we go, what do you guys think about watch order for Small Axe? Because obviously Steve McQueen put it in a specific order.
Right.
I don't necessarily love the order he put it in personally. Like, I don't think that necessarily is the best viewing experience.
I think the way I would recommend just skipping over Lovers Rock, saving it to the end. That's about all. That's about the only change I'd make to it.
I think start with Mangrove and with Lovers Rock.
It's fair. I would actually, in some ways, argue that it's always so tough because sometimes I feel like if you're 100% invested in watching all 5 of them and you're not going to drop out, I would argue watch Alex Weidel first.
Right, fair.
Because you then can see like the progression in terms of how they get better. But if you are worried about not wanting to get invested in all of them, I would not watch Alex Weidel first. I would watch maybe Red, White, and Blue first because it's shorter than Mangrove. But I think the only reason I might do Red, White, and Blue first is because it's shorter. It has a bigger name. I think people will be more likely. It might be more accessible to watch the movie that has the Star Wars guy in it. That's 80 minutes long.
We have discussed as a possibility is chronological, which I don't know if it's clear, but I would say that's probably what Education, Mangrove, Alex Riedel, Red, White, and Blue, Lovers Rock, as far as going from the 60s to the 80s.
I think that's right.
Yeah, I think that's right as well. I think there's also like I watched it different orders the first time versus the second time. I do think there's interesting ways to play around this if you choose to rewatch and just like putting it around, see how movies affect you differently if you watch them in different orders. Like, I think it's just interesting to experience that ways. With that being said, thank you to Chance for coming on the podcast again, talking about some wonderful films. We will definitely have him back. He's one of our gold platinum level guests.
Yeah, you're the most. Actually, you're not the most because Coho would be ahead of you at this point with the Oscars.
He is the most regular episodes, non-specials. Chance is the leader right now. He has the belt. Chance is also a man who knows something about having belts.
I do know something about having belts.
And this is the first time I didn't say something that made you mad about music. So we made
that is true. It's very true.
Zach has a wonderful habit to everyone in the audience. You can go back and watch episodes where somebody starts talking about how passionate they are about a specific type of music, and then Zach proceeds to take a giant shit on them right after they just announced their devotion to this type of music. It's always a fun time. And then I end up playing moderator the next 10 minutes while they have to work out the differences.
Our biggest fight to this day has nothing to do with quality of music. It has to do with the definition of our frontman, our most heated moment on this podcast.
We got into a fight on the Eurovision episode about who is the frontman of Fire Saga.
For 20 minutes.
We're not going to make Chance weigh in because we do not need to involve him in that fight.
I also have not seen Eurovision yet, so.
You have not seen Eurovision yet. All right, well, we can help anyway. Thank you to Chance. Next week, we have a bonus episode coming up. We're going to do top 10 of 2020. Talk about some performances, basically do our best of 2020. That is where you will find out who Zach and I have for best actors, best pictures. Well, not really best pictures. We're doing top 10s. And then some other awards as well. We don't have to play by the Oscars rules. We don't have to play by the ones that we think we're going to get nominated. We're just going to pick our favorites, and that'll be a fun time. We will also be reading some other top 10s from guests that we will acquire from them before we do that episode. And then
if you want to mail us top 10s, and I know this already happened, but it hasn't happened. Mail us your top 10s into our email, whatever.
Do not do that.
Why can't they email us top 10s? We don't have to read it.
Yeah, send us top 10s of any subject to our email, lucasandzackpodcast@gmail.com. We will maybe read them at some point.
All I'm trying to do is push our email account. Also, you can tweet us at Lucas and Zack Podcast. Twitter hashtag
at Lucas and Zack Podcast.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
On Twitter. Yes, please send us random top 10s. The more random, the better. Yeah. We will also have an announcement on the bonus episode, top 10s of 2020, on our April topic. We will announce that then, and then you will get to know what the first movie of that topic is and what the topic is overall. With that being said, thank you, Chance. Thank you, Zach. We are done here. We will see you next week. Zach, song? You're singing?
Oh, shit. Everybody, I'm not able to hit Janet. And I'm sick. I'm not even going to try Janet K's first. So we're doing a reprise.
Reprise.
Let's do the reprise. Come through fighting. Man.
Everybody together. Oh. This is everybody, guys. Lucas and Zack podcasting. I'm not going to turn up because it's kind of racist. So chapter fast as lightning.
Because it's kind of racist.
In fact, it was a little bit frightening. But they fought with expert podcasting.
We'll see you next week.